Sandlin. I appreciate you being here today and taking your time out of your busy schedule as you seek re-election to come and visit with us today about what's happening nationally on renewable energy. I think it's very important that we look back to see what benefits we've gotten out of all types of renewable energy in order to determine what the value is in moving forward as we look at renewable energy. I think ethanol is probably our best example, and I'm not going to talk a lot about ethanol because Mitch is an expert in ethanol. He's done a lot of work with the Farmers Union on blender pumps and other programs. I would say though that as an original incorporator of the American Coalition for Ethanol, we did promote some ideas in the past that we believe have been very beneficial to have helped develop the industry in South Dakota and nationally as we see it. Some of our leadership in South Dakota, where we began to have blender pumps, or we began to have producer payments, was something that other states in the nation adopted, and more producer payments were created by other states, which helped spur this industry along. Another significant thing we did in South Dakota was a 2-cent pump incentive that at most places in South Dakota, the consumer is the beneficiary of. Most gas stations pass that 2-cent incentive along. So that's been very helpful. I think there's a good future in the ethanol industry as we continue to develop our corn-based ethanol, but also as we move into the new era of cellulosic ethanol. And a lot of research is going on in that, and again, South Dakota finds itself in leadership position in that research. But today I'd like to talk a little bit more about wind energy and about where we're at and where we're at in comparison to our neighboring states and some of the challenges that brings about. As Congresswoman Sandlin has stated, the Congress passed the one-year extension on the production tax credit, which is extremely important to that industry. Also contained in that bill was the clean renewable energy bonds, which relate directly to organizations like East River, municipals like Madison. If we want to move into renewable energy, we have the ability to issue bonds now, and those bonds are almost zero interest, so we're almost equal to the production tax credit in terms of the benefit that provides. So we felt that was very important for our future. If we look at South Dakota today in our wind development, we look at our neighboring states, Minnesota, North Dakota, and Iowa, we see that there's been a lot more development in those states than there has in South Dakota. And probably the number one reason for that is because of the incentives that are offered in those states. We have virtually the same or better wind than, for example, Minnesota. We have better wind than Minnesota. Probably have the same wind as North Dakota, and maybe a little better than Iowa. But when you build a 100-megawatt wind farm in South Dakota, if you build that farm and put it into operation, you will receive about $5 million less over the first 10 years of operation in incentives than you would in any of those other three states. And again, that's right on the bottom line for the developer, and that's why they look at those states. That number used to be $10 million. Last year, based on a bill that actually came out of East River Electric and was submitted, the governor also had an idea about some. We married those two bills together, and we were able to reduce that $10 million by $5 million through some property tax relief. I was very proud of the fact that as we worked on that bill, we were able to keep the counties whole in that, so the counties didn't see any reduced tax dollars than the original bill that we had proposed. So we closed that gap halfway, but we still have to finish closing that gap. And some of the ideas that I've had about trying to develop plans in state to do that are an example, again, that we used in the ethanol industry. We have the Petroleum Relief Fund in South Dakota, which is a tax or a fee on gasoline pipelines in South Dakota. And that fee or that fund is used at 1 cent a gallon, and a half a cent was used to help gas stations that had leaking tanks dig up those tanks and fix them. The first $10,000 of any kind of cleanup was covered by the gas station, and after that, the state's fund kicked in and covered the rest of the cost. A quarter of a cent was used to help develop the South Dakota Water Development Fund to use as matching dollars for federal water project money that we got. And the final quarter of a cent was used to fund the ethanol producer payment fund. I think we have an opportunity with all the pipeline activity and things that we see going on in South Dakota today to look at another franchise fee similar to that for renewable energy development and use those dollars to help close that $5 million gap. So early on in my time in Pierre, when I'm elected as a District 8 State Senate representative or state senator, I would like to introduce a bill that would address that gap that we have today between our renewable energy incentives and our neighboring states' renewable energy incentives to help jumpstart this the renewable energy environment in South Dakota. I would say that today we do generate about 45 megawatts of about 55 megawatts of renewable wind energy in South Dakota. Some of you may have seen last night, there's another project coming together and will begin generating electricity in November or December. In 2010, the rural electrics will be building another 150 megawatts of wind near the Crow Lake area, south of Wessington Springs, north of White Lake. So we're excited about that, and we're going to do that whether we get these bills or not, but these bills would certainly help developers look more favorably on South Dakota. So with that, I'm going to stop talking and we'll hear from our other